Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 76, 8th Level of Qi Condensation. Moments ago, the Foundation establishment cultivators of the three mountain peaks had been looking on, smiling with the realization that Elder Ju was simply trying to frighten Bai Xiaochun. But then Bai Xiaochun suddenly fought back against the lightning, and their expressions flickered. Many were about to intervene, but then they realized that the lightning didn't harm him at all. Strange gleams appeared in their eyes. This kid is extraordinary. No wonder the Luo Chen clan couldn't chase him down and kill him. He has some very unique abilities. This young scion of ours might just be on the same level as Shangguan Qianyu. He's clearly surpassed Lu Qianlei and Zhu Xianxia already. As they looked on, nodding inwardly, sect leader Zheng Yuandong stood atop Mount Daoseed, watching the situation unfold with a strange look in his eyes. Even as Bai Xiaochun cried out at the top of his lungs, Zheng Yuandong was using divine sense to watch everything. He was shocked by what he saw Bai Xiaochun doing. Instead of immediately interfering, he waited, hoping to see Bai Xiaochun show off his full potential. Eventually, he began to nod with admiration. Finally, he flickered into motion, appearing directly in front of the madly fleeing Bai Xiaochun. As soon as Bai Xiaochun saw Zheng Yuandong, he cried out, "Dear elder brother sect leader, Elder Ju is trying to kill me. My poor little life is on the line." Even as the words left his mouth, he dove behind Zheng Yuandong to hide. Zheng Yuandong coughed dryly at Bai Xiaochun's woeful appearance. Smiling wryly, he looked up at the incoming Elder Ju, who was glaring fiercely at Bai Xiaochun. A moment later, Elder Ju came to a stop in front of him, where he clasped hands in greeting. These two men were wily old foxes, and as soon as their eyes met, they both knew what the other was thinking. Both of them were well aware that Bai Xiaochun's presence meant that the sect had another fearfully talented person in its ranks. That was something far more important than the trifling incident with the phoenix. If Li Qinghu were in the sect, things would have been easier to keep under control. But with him gone, no one in the sect could really control Bai Xiaochun. That was especially true considering his recent achievements, coupled with the fact that he was a prestige disciple and the junior brother of the sect leader. Zheng Yuandong was fairly certain that if he tried to punish Bai Xiaochun would simply go to the portrait of his master to weep and complain. "Sect leader," said Elder Ju, "please pay no heed to this affair and hand Bai Xiaochun over to me immediately." With that, Elder Ju glared at Bai Xiaochun, chuckling cruelly. Bai Xiaochun's scalp immediately went numb, and he began to explain, "Your bird." As soon as Elder Ju heard the word bird, his face began to turn green. Bai Xiaochun immediately bit his tongue and turned his pleading gaze to Zheng Yuandong. "Elder brother," he said, "I've shed my own blood for the sect, I've performed great services." Zheng Yuandong's face twitched, and he coughed dryly. "Elder Ju," he said, "let's drop this matter. Xiaochun might be a bit naughty and mischievous, but he's a good person. How about this? If anything like this happens again in the future, I won't intervene at all, and you can handle the matter any way you see fit." Elder Ju looked very torn, but eventually he nodded begrudgingly. Then he took his leave, casting one more glare at Bai Xiaochun as he did. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath and slowly rose to his feet. He looked a bit suspicious. He was an intelligent person, and the way things had turned out seemed very sudden. Something seemed off. However, he wasn't completely sure of what it all meant, so he looked over at the sect leader. Zheng Yuandong looked back at him. "Those phoenixes were raised by Elder Ju's former Daoist partner," he said coolly. "There was a battle once outside the sect in which that Daoist partner died in the process of saving Elder Ju's life. Elder Ju himself barely survived. The pain of losing his Daoist partner harmed his mind, and he nearly went insane. Most people think he's merely obsessed with plants and vegetation. What they don't know is that without that obsession, he wouldn't be able to suppress the insanity within. He uses that obsession to stave off the madness. In the future, don't provoke him. If he really goes mad, I might not be able to save you in time. Hearing this, Bai Xiaochun's spine tingled in fear, and yet, he couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for Elder Ju. Nodding vigorously, he said, I really didn't give it the medicine. His bird really did steal it from me. Zheng Yuandong patted Bai Xiaochun's shoulder. Karma exists everywhere. In this case, the karma was sown by you, so there's no need to think too much about the details. With that, Zheng Yuandong turned and left. Bai Xiaochun sighed at how unlucky he was, and began to contemplate ways to avoid Elder Ju in the future. Then he cautiously returned to Fragrant Cloud Peak, where he went into seclusion in his residence. As for the thieving bird, Bai Xiaochun decided that considering how he needed to avoid provoking Elder Ju, it would be best to cast aside any thoughts of revenge. True men don't fight with birds, he told himself to make the decision easier to stomach. Sitting there in his log cabin, he produced several of the violet chi spirit ascension pills he had concocted. Thinking back to how Elder Ju had attacked him during the chase, his eyes gleamed with envy. Foundation establishment cultivators are pretty incredible, he thought, sighing. He almost made me cough up some blood. Thankfully I have my undying skin. With another glance at the violet chi spirit ascension pills, he looked around furtively to make sure he was alone, and then produced the turtle walk to perform some spirit enhancements. Soon, all of the pills had received threefold enhancements, and contained faint silver designs on their surfaces. Bai Xiaochun sighed again. If only I had some fuel to make four-colored flame. Based on some discreet inquiries he'd made earlier, he knew that the sect did have fuel to make four-colored flame. However, it wasn't very plentiful, and required an incredible amount of merit points to acquire. With the exception of certain unique medicines, or certain cultivation practices related to fire, it was rare to ever need four-colored flame. It was generally impossible to procure such fuel from the market at the bottom of the mountain. The only place it usually appeared was at auction, and even then, it wasn't commonly seen. I'm running low on spirit tails too, he thought. After some more thought, he finally popped one of the violet chi spirit ascension pills into his mouth and began to cultivate. Days passed. Bai Xiaochun practiced cultivation the entire time, occasionally consuming violet chi spirit ascension pills as he did. His cultivation rapidly progressed until eventually, he ran out of pills. It happened late at night, when the clouds filled the sky obscuring the moon. Inside, rumbling could be heard, not within the cabin itself, but inside Bai Xiaochun's body. He began to shake as spiritual power built up inside of him, becoming a vast, dragon-like river that raged through all of his chi vessels. After completing a full cycle within him, his overall spiritual power expanded, surpassing his previous limit significantly. Filth oozed out from the pores all over his body, and an invigorating sense of buoyancy filled him. Enlivened, his eyes snapped open, and they shone like beacons in the dark of night. The 8th level of chi condensation. Laughing heartily, he rushed out of his courtyard to wash off. He had been in the spirit stream sect for years now, and although he was a lot tougher, he hadn't grown much physically, which left him feeling a bit depressed. In terms of his overall appearance, he was still just as pure and fair, and just as skinny. Now that I'm in the 8th level of chi condensation, my controlling arts should be much more powerful. He waved his finger at a nearby boulder, which subsequently flew up into the air. In accord with Bai Xiaochun's will, it sped up, then slowed down as he experimented with both lightness in heaviness and heaviness in lightness. What I'm most interested in, however, is what I accidentally unleashed when fighting Chen Heng, the human controlling grand magic. Eyes shining with a bright light, Bai Xiaochun experimented a bit more, but made little progress. After all, controlling inanimate objects and controlling people were two different things. Finally, he decided to abandon the idea for the time being. Later, back in his courtyard, he stood there contemplating the matter. In the description of the Violet Chi Cauldron summoning art, it says that once you cultivate all the way to the 8th level, you can utilize a mid-grade version of Violet Chi Cauldron summoning. With that, he performed a double-handed incantation gesture and waved his finger. Violet chi swirled about, and after 2 breaths of time passed, a large violet cauldron appeared in front of him. This time, it went much faster than before, at least twice as fast. Furthermore, it was larger than before, and it was much more corporeal. It was so clear that various magical symbols could be seen engraved on the surface of the cauldron. From the terrifying pressure that radiated from the large cauldron, Xiaochun could tell that it was anything but ordinary. That pressure is far more powerful than before. He quickly probed his cultivation base. When he used Violet Chi cauldron summoning in the past, it drew significantly on his spiritual power, and would require a lot of cultivation to recover from afterward. But now, he still retained about 70% of his internal spiritual energy. I can use it 3 times in a row. Elated, he dispersed the violet cauldron and pulled out the golden crow sword. As the golden light spread, he stepped onto the golden crow, and then flew out of the sect. Soon he was in the jungle outside of the sect. Up above, the sky rumbled with thunder, as though a storm were brewing. Sensing the impending danger of the storm, Xiaochun quickly stopped in place and performed an incantation gesture, once again summoning the violet cauldron. Waving his finger, he sent it smashing into a nearby boulder. A boom echoed out, and the ground trembled, startling countless birds and animals. A crater appeared, with crevices snaking out from it for 30 meters in all directions. "So powerful," he said with a gasp. After measuring himself up, he was sure that with his undying silver skin and violet chi cauldron summoning, if he had to fight Chen Hang again, it wouldn't take much effort on his part to wipe him out. Or maybe not, he thought after a bit of hesitation. After all, fighting Chen Hang would still be quite dangerous, and would be best avoided. He could still lose his poor little life. The best thing would be to fight only enemies in the 7th level of chi condensation. With the snap of a finger, Xiaochun could easily turn anyone from the 1st to the 7th level of chi condensation into ash. He flicked his sleeve proudly, but unfortunately, there was no nearby fence to stand on. He was forced to remain on the golden crow sword, sticking his chin up, looking up at the clouds like a lonely hero. Finally, he turned the golden crow sword around and headed back toward the sect. However, it was at this point that countless lightning bolts formed overhead. Attracted by the golden crow sword, they began to descend toward Xiaochun like silver snakes. Xiaochun's eyes went wide, and moments later, agonized screams could be heard amidst the crash of thunder. Chapter 77. Auction. Soon after, Xiaochun hobbled back to Fragrant Cloud Peak, hair standing on end, face smudged with ash. Heart pounding with residual fear, he crawled back into his courtyard and thought back to the rain of lightning he had just passed through, and shivered. Then he swore an oath to never again fly on a sword through a thunderstorm. That wasn't flying. That was risking one's life. Back in his log cabin, he grimaced in pain for quite some time before composing himself. Sitting down cross-legged on his bed, he looked at the rain falling outside, and then slowly rotated his cultivation base. Tier 2 spirit medicines are appropriate for the 8th level of chi condensation and lower. If I want to raise my cultivation base any further, I really need to concoct some Tier 3 spirit medicine. Resting his chin on his hand, he pondered the matter. Tier 3 spirit medicines are even harder to concoct. The only way to do it with confidence is to first be very familiar with numerous Tier 2 spirit medicines. Without a stable foundation, the chances of success are small. With that, he opened his bag of holding and examined his current accumulation of resources. The result was a long sigh. Although he had collected quite a few gifts due to his status as a prestige disciple, he had consumed a terrifying amount of ingredients in his pill concocting efforts recently. The result was that his stores were running low. "I can't keep going on this way," he said, bowing his head thoughtfully. "I'll definitely run out. I'm already a pretty incredible journeyman apothecary. Maybe I should try to sell some medicine." That thought started to get him excited. By the next morning, the rain had stopped, and he left his residence to go to the market and ask some questions. After getting a clearer idea of the prices of various medicinal pills, he bought a huge batch of medicinal plants, and then went to the sect to buy more with merit points. Finally, he took another trip to the medicine concocting pavilion to begin working. Although Tier 2 medicinal pills would fetch a high price, they consumed a lot of ingredients. Furthermore, considering the way he concocted, they wouldn't be the best use of his time. Therefore, he chose to concoct some Tier 1 medicines that he was more familiar with. Over the course of the following days, he produced 3 different types of spirit medicines, each batch of which produced 8 or 9 pills. He also made 2 sticks of spirit incense. With that accomplished, he headed back to the market. The South Bank market wasn't very large. Other than a few shops set up by inner sect disciples and other senior members of the sect, most of the establishments were run by various cultivator clans from other parts of the eastward continent. It was like a little town, bustling mostly with outer sect disciples from the 3 mountain peaks. Having been there on numerous occasions, Bai Xiaochun was quite familiar with the place. After finding the shop he was looking for, he entered and cleared his throat, whereupon a salesperson approached. "Call the shop owner out," Bai Xiaochun said. "In addition to buying some ingredients, this time I want to sell some medicinal pills." With that, he sat down in a chair, smiling so broadly that his eyes turned into slits. A short time later, a middle-aged man wearing a long violet robe walked up. When he saw that it was Bai Xiaochun, he smiled. "Fellow Daoist Bai, I am your humble servant Sun Chen," he said, clasping hands. "I've heard many stories about you, fellow Daoist Bai, but was always worried about disturbing your peace, so I never went to offer formal greetings. I truly regret that now." Beaming, Sun Chen sat down across from Bai Xiaochun. Well aware of Bai Xiaochun's high position in the sect, he had no desire to offend him. Furthermore, the fact that he was a prestige disciple meant that the Sun clan still wanted to get on Bai Xiaochun's good side, despite the 100-year prohibition set in place by the sect leader. Bai Xiaochun laughed heartily and then exchanged some pleasantries. Next, he pulled out 3 bottles of medicinal pills and 2 sticks of incense, which he placed on the table between them. Sticking his chin up, he asked, "Fellow Daoist Sun, how much do you think these are worth?" Sun Chen picked up the medicinal pills, and after examining them, seemed pleasantly surprised. Although they were low-grade Tier 1 medicinal pills, they had an impurity level of only about 81 or 82%, placing them very close to the mid-grade level. The pills usually acquired by the shop tended to be low-grade pills with impurity levels of 84 or 85%. Looking up at Bai Xiaochun with shining eyes, he said, "Brother Bai, your Tao of medicine is quite refined. We would love to purchase all of your spirit medicines. How about we offer you 120 spirit stones? What do you say?" Bai Xiaochun was instantly delighted. That price was almost 4 spirit stones per medicinal pill, which was just about the highest price possible for low-grade Tier 1 medicinal pills. Actually, the production cost for such a pill was, on average, only about half a spirit stone. Thrilled, the two of them completed the transaction and then continued to chat a bit. Eventually they came to an agreement. As long as Bai Xiaochun continued to supply the shop with medicinal pills, he could acquire ingredients without handing over any spirit stones. In the end, Bai Xiaochun left feeling very pleased. More time passed. Months went by in a flash, during which time Bai Xiaochun continuously concocted Tier 1 spirit medicines to sell in exchange for ingredients. He also spent time familiarizing himself with Tier 2 spirit medicines. Gradually, he grew more and more adept. At the same time, his relationship with the Sun clan's medicine shop grew more stable. The Sun clan bought virtually all of his medicinal pills. One day during the course of doing business, Sun Chen took a few bottles of medicinal pills and handed some plant ingredients over to Bai Xiaochun. As they chatted, Sun clan sighed and said, "Brother Bai, considering your skill in medicine concocting, why don't you concoct some Tier 2 spirit medicine? Every few years 100 clans auction is held, and as of today, it's only about 3 months away. If you concocted some Tier 2 spirit medicine, I could help you put some of it up for auction. I'm sure you'd get a great price." After their months of doing business together, Sun Chen had come to find that Bai Xiaochun was cheerful and charismatic, and quite the joy to interact with, which was why he was being so helpful. Bai Xiaochun had also heard of the 100 clans auction, which was arranged by roughly 100 of the cultivator clans from the eastward continent. There were 3 locations where the auctions would be held. One was in the North Bank Market, the second was the South Bank Market, and the third was in the largest city of cultivators on the continent, Eastwood City. Bai Xiaochun had been in the Spirit Stream sect for several years already, and the last auction had been held around the time he had first joined the outer sect. Back then, he had been mostly focused on stealing spirit tail chickens, and hadn't been interested in auctions. His interest having been piqued, he asked a few questions about when exactly the South Bank auction would be held, and then finally took his leave. After returning to the medicine concocting pavilion, he sat down cross-legged to think for a while before finally making a decision. What Sun Chen said makes sense. Instead of selling a little bit here and there, I might as well take advantage of the situation to sell something really expensive. Afterward, I can purchase a whole bunch of ingredients. After considering things, he thought of some various Tier 2 spirit medicines, and finally decided to concoct the one he was most familiar with, the Violet Qi Spirit Ascension Pill. Having made his decision, he went into seclusion at the medicine concocting pavilion and began to work on concocting Violet Qi Spirit Ascension Pills. 2 months went by. After exchanging all of the medicinal pills he could for ingredients, he was able to concoct 3 bottles of Violet Qi Spirit Ascension Pills, each one containing 10 pills. He also ended up with 1 pill whose color was different from the other light violet pills. This pill was dark violet, and didn't have a very strong medicinal aroma, as if it refused to let such an aroma waft out from within it. When that particular medicinal pill had emerged, the pill furnace had shaken in a way that was clearly different than the previous times. It was even been accompanied by a burst of earth flame. Upon closer examination of the pill, Bai Xiaochun's eyes gleamed with excitement. Mid-grade. I, Bai Xiaochun, have finally concocted a mid-grade spirit medicine. There probably won't be very many mid-grade spirit medicines at the auction. However, if I really want to cause a stir, I'll have to do better than this. After all, this auction only happens once every few years. There will surely be plenty of rare items up for sale. After some thought, he gritted his teeth and then took out the turtlewalk to perform a spirit enhancement. After the 3-fold enhancement was completed, silver light glittered, and the spirit medicine was no longer mid-grade. It had broken all the way past superior grade to be premium grade. This type of premium grade pill was quite shocking, with an impurity level of only 10% or so. Bai Xiaochun was very pleased. The Violet Qi Spirit Ascension Pill resting in his hand was now so dark it was almost black. It had 3 spirit designs on its surface, which were faint but clearly visible. Anyone who laid eyes on the pill would be able to tell that it was something extraordinary. Bai Xiaochun suddenly had the feeling that this pill was another tool he could use to become famous. Laughing proudly, he pulled out a little knife and carved a picture onto it, a lovely little turtle. Lord Turtle will once again make an appearance. Bai Xiaochun rose to his feet in excitement and anticipation. He took his medicinal pills out of the sect, and returned 2 hours later in high spirits, looking very pleased with himself. He could still picture the shock on Sun Chen's face the moment he saw the 3 bottles of Violet Qi Spirit Ascension Pills. The moment he noticed that there was also a premium-grade spirit medicine which had received a 3-fold spirit enhancement, his jaw had nearly dropped to the floor in astonishment. Only 1 more month to go until the auction, Bai Xiaochun thought, looking at the jade slip he held, which was his ticket to the auction itself. Throughout the following days, everyone was talking about the auction. Soon, the disciples of the 3 mountain peaks on the southern bank began to make various preparations, hoping to strike it lucky at the auction. The market also thrummed with activity. One of my clanmates from the North Bank said that in the last auction, a Yellow Springs flame went up for sale, a legendary item. It was only a spark, but could still be considered a unique treasure. One of the disciples from the North Bank bought it at an exorbitant price. There should be tons of unique treasures up for sale at this 100 clans auction, including a lot of shocking medicinal pills. That's because the outer sect chosen battles will be coming up. They only happen once every 30 years. You're probably right. The joint North and South Bank outer sect chosen battles are a grand occasion for the entire Spirit Stream sect. It's too bad that the top 10 from the South Bank haven't been able to match up to the North Bank for years now. I wonder if one of the South Bank's top 10 will be able to get revenge this year. Over the following month, talk of the auction grew more and more common throughout the sect. Bai Xiaochun heard much of the talk, and noticed a lot of people discussing the joint North and South Bank outer sect chosen battles. However, he didn't pay much attention to such talk. Soon, the month had passed. One morning at dawn when Bai Xiaochun was meditating, his eyes suddenly opened, and he pulled a glowing jade slip out of his bag of holding. The auction is going to start, he thought, eyes shining with anticipation. He quickly hurried out of his courtyard and raced down the mountain. Along the way, he passed quite a few outer sect disciples, until he noticed a few beams of light speeding by overhead. He smacked his own forehead at the realization that he'd forgotten about being able to fly. Quickly performing an incantation gesture, he summoned the Golden Crow sword. Stepping onto the Golden Crow, he transformed into a beam of golden light that shot off into the distance. He soon reached the market. Head high and chest out, he entered the auction pavilion. It was a huge structure, with several thousand seats set up on the auction floor, as well as an open area behind the seats where a crowd of people stood, packed together tightly. As for Bai Xiaochun, he was whisked away by Sun Chen, who took him to a private room on the second floor, and then left. The room was relatively small, with a narrow balcony, beneath which was the main auction floor. The auction stage was also clearly visible. This was not Bai Xiaochun's first time being present for such a lively affair. Instead of behaving like the Foundation establishment cultivators in the other private rooms, who stayed out of sight, Bai Xiaochun made sure to lean out of the balcony. Worried that people might not notice him, he began to clear his throat as loudly as possible. Soon, some people down below saw him, casting odd glances at him before turning away. Unfortunately, there were simply too many people present, so no matter how loudly he cleared his throat, the sound would only go so far. Off in the distance, he caught sight of Hu Xiaomai, as well as Zhu Xinqi and some of the other people he knew. However, they were too far away to notice him. Even after yelling at the top of his lungs, they didn't turn his way, and he started to get a bit depressed. Finally, he lost interest. In any case, sticking himself out of the balcony was a bit tiring. Furthermore, there was always the danger of accidentally falling. If that happened, then it would only take a day for everyone on the entire South Bank to hear about it. Time passed, and more people showed up. After about an hour, the sound of a cauldron being struck rung out, and everything went quiet. Countless eyes were all fixed on the auction stage. Soon, a middle-aged man in a green garment appeared. Smiling, he stood there and greeted everyone with clasped hands. "I am your humble servant Chen Song. I presume many of you fellow Taoists are already familiar with me. I will be presiding over the auction today. The rules are the same as ever, all lots go to the highest bidder." Without any further ado, he waved his right hand, and a glowing door rose up on the auction stage. A young woman emerged, holding a platter, atop which was an oddly shaped rock formed of various metals. The rock glowed with garish, multicolored light that reflected within the excited, shocked eyes of the thousands of auction attendees. Bai Xiaochun looked closely at the rock but couldn't quite tell what it was. However, other people in the crowd seemed to know exactly what it was, and were already getting excited. When Chen Song spoke, his voice was soft, but he boosted it with his Foundation establishment cultivation base, ensuring that it spread out for all to hear. Lot 1 is a piece of auric or minimum bid, 300 spirit stones. Bid increment is a minimum of 50 spirit stones. 350 spirit stones, someone cried out. 400. Almost as soon as the first bid came out, another topped it. Before long, the price reached 700 spirit stones, and the item was sold to a disciple from Violet Cauldron Peak. Bai Xiaochun looked at the piece of ore with wide eyes, trying to figure out why it could possibly be worth 700 spirit stones. Another thing he'd noticed was that after the auction had begun, a spell formation had been activated which amplified the voices of anyone calling out bids. "It's just a piece of metal," he thought a bit sourly as he sat there watching. More items appeared and were sold. One of them was a green horn from a juvenile dragon, which had apparently been struck by lightning, leaving sparks of electricity coursing along its surface. It fetched a price of 8,000 spirit stones, which left Bai Xiaochun completely shaken. After the auction had been going for about an hour, Chen Song's voice rang out with the following words: "The next lot is a bottle of Tier 2 spirit medicine. Violet Chi Spirit Ascension Pills, a total of 10. They are close to mid-grade, with an impurity level of 81%. Minimum price, 100 spirit stones. Bid increment is a minimum of 10 spirit stones. Bai Xiaochun instantly perked up and stared out at the auction floor in anticipation. Thinking nervously about how much he might make, he waited for someone to call out a bid. However, for some reason, the only thing that met his ears was silence. Even as his heart began to pound, someone called out an opening bid. 110 spirit stones. The bidder was an outer sect disciple, and the amount bid was apparently all of his savings. After calling out the bid, he stared around nervously. However, Bai Xiaochun was even more nervous than he was. That bottle of Violet Chi Spirit Ascension Pills had cost him about 50 spirit stones to manufacture, and if he sold it at the market, would fetch a price of 150 or 160. At the moment, all he could do was scowl at the audience in astonishment. Just when Chen Song was about to strike down with the auction hammer, someone else called out another price. Then, more people jumped in. In the end, the price jumped all the way to 180 spirit stones. 180 spirit stones isn't bad. That's about 20 higher than at the market. Sighing in relief, he wiped the sweat from his brow. The truth was, the price the bottle had fetched earned him a tidy profit, although it didn't come close to the value of some of the other precious items which had gone up for bid so far. Soon, his second bottle went up, and ended up selling for a slightly higher price, 200 spirit stones. Bai Xiaochun was very pleased. By the time the third bottle went up, the Qi condensation disciples were getting very excited, and more people jumped in on the bidding. In the end, Bai Xiaochun was ecstatic. The final price reached 230 spirit stones. More than 700 spirit stones. Now this is what I call an auction. I already have enough spirit stones to concoct a tier 3 spirit medicine. Bai Xiaochun was an easy person to please. His sour mood from before was completely gone, and he sat there happily waiting for the premium grade spirit medicine to appear. Considering the price the other bottles fetched, I think the premium grade might get 300 spirit stones. After a bit of hesitation, he changed his mind. 200 would be fine. He nodded confidently. Time passed. Bai Xiaochun sat there waiting until it was afternoon. There on the auction stage, Chen Song's expression suddenly turned a bit strange. Looking around at the audience, he cleared his throat. The next lot is something a bit interesting. It's a tier 2 spirit medicine, also a Violet Chi Spirit Ascension Pill. However, there's something different about it. Bai Xiaochun sat there anxiously on the balcony, mind buzzing with nervousness. Chapter 78. What are they talking about? People on the auction floor immediately got excited upon hearing Chen Song's announcement. The only ones who didn't care were the inner sect disciples whose cultivation bases were above the 8th level of Qi condensation, who began to chat among themselves about other topics, or simply closed their eyes to rest. Please take a moment to examine the pill first, Chen Song said with a dry cough. Afterward, I will reveal the price. It was at this point that a pretty young woman emerged from the glowing door, holding a wooden box in her hands. Excitement built as everyone craned their necks to try to get a look at exactly what type of Violet Chi Spirit Ascension pill this was that would cause such a strange expression to appear on Chen Song's face. Bai Xiaochun was getting more and more nervous, and began to breathe heavily as he looked over at the auction stage. A moment later, the pretty young woman lifted the lid off the box and pulled out a dark violet pill. The medicinal pill was especially conspicuous considering the fairness of her skin. It glowed with a soft light, and the 3 designs on its surface were especially noticeable. Also visible was the little turtle etched next to the spirit designs. At first, silence prevailed. But then, a huge commotion broke out. A 3-fold spirit enhancement. Heavens! Are my eyes deceiving me? That's insane. It's actually a tier 2 spirit medicine with a 3-fold spirit enhancement. I can't believe somebody succeeded in doing such a thing. This is crazy. A spirit-enhanced Violet Chi Spirit Ascension Pill. The voices of the flabbergasted outer sect disciples rose up into a cacophony that filled the entire auction floor. Damn it! Who actually did something like that? What a waste! A threefold spirit enhancement like that? What psycho had the inclination to do such a thing? Even the inner sect disciples who had been ignoring things up to this point looked over in surprise. When they saw the spirit designs running across the surface of the medicinal pill, their eyes went wide, and they gasped. Many of them even shot to their feet. It must be stated that the success rate of spirit enhancement was not very high. A one-fold enhancement was difficult enough, and a two-fold enhancement was even harder. As for a three-fold enhancement, it all depended on luck. Even grandmasters wouldn't dare to claim the ability to succeed at a threefold enhancement. In the spirit stream sect, far too many people had destroyed magical items in the process of attempting threefold spirit enhancements, much to their heartache. Because of that, most people had a love-hate relationship with spirit enhancement. Whenever people did manage to succeed, they would arouse the envy of their contemporaries. For a magical item to successfully receive a threefold spirit enhancement would make it more powerful to a shocking degree, and would make many people desire to acquire it. But now, everyone was astonished to find themselves looking at a medicinal pill which had received a threefold spirit enhancement. Furthermore, it was a Tier 2 medicinal pill. If a gorgeous pattern were to develop on the wings of a butterfly, everyone would marvel at the spectacular beauty. But if such a design were to appear on the back of a pig, it could only be described as a huge waste. Mixed emotions could be seen on the faces of the onlookers as numerous thoughts ran through their minds. Many of them even clenched their fists into balls, causing veins to bulge out on their hands and faces. The inner sect disciples from Violet Cauldron Peak were especially pained, considering that they studied spirit enhancement as part of their cultivation. What luck! Somebody actually managed to perform a spirit enhancement on a medicinal pill, and then brought it here to sell. Damn it! If I were that lucky, I would definitely have a spirit-enhanced treasure. Even the Foundation establishment cultivators on the second floor were looking at the medicinal pill in front of them in shock. Bai Xiaochun sat on the balcony watching all of this happening, somewhat surprised. He looked blankly at the enraged crowd below, some of whom were turning red in the face. He suddenly had the feeling that he might have gone too far. He immediately put a look of righteous indignation onto his face and then pointed at the medicinal pill angrily. "Loser!" he shouted furiously. "What loser made that pill?" Off in the distance, Sun Chen was smiling wryly. When he first saw the medicinal pill, he had experienced the same feeling most people in the audience were feeling right now. But then he saw the way Bai Xiaochun was acting off in the distance, and his jaw dropped. A little bit of sweat even dripped down the side of his face. However, it was at this point that someone in the crowd with sharp eyes happened to notice the little turtle etched into the side of the pill. Why does that little turtle seem so familiar? Almost as soon as the words left his mouth, others in the crowd began to look more closely at the pill. At first, they had all been so surprised by the three spirit designs that they didn't look at anything else. But now they all noticed the turtle etching. That little turtle. Hey, I remember. Back on Fragrant Cloud Peak, the first place spot on all of the stone steles at the 10,000 Medicines Pavilion is occupied by a little turtle. This turtle looks just like that one. The style is exactly the same. That was etched by a person. The person who concocted that pill, and then went to the insane length of performing a threefold spirit enhancement, was none other than the mysterious and unfathomable chosen of Fragrant Cloud Peak, the little turtle. Cries of excitement rang up. After all, many disciples in the audience were from Fragrant Cloud Peak, and once they saw the little turtle, they were struck with astonishment. More and more people caught sight of the turtle, and gasps rang out. People even began to rise to their feet. Although not much news about Fragrant Cloud Peak's little turtle had spread lately, he was incredibly famous. Everyone in the sect knew about him, and many people continued to speculate all the time about who exactly he was. However, no one had been able to solve the mystery. The little turtle was simply too mysterious, so mysterious that apparently no one knew his true identity. He liked to keep an extremely low profile, and was indifferent to the outside world, paying virtually no attention to it at all. But all of a sudden, he had made another appearance. Furthermore, he had chosen to completely shake the entire auction and shock everyone who attended. Xianxia was there in the crowd, her eyes shining brightly as she looked at the medicinal pill. Her chest heaved, and various emotions coursed through her. "So, you finally show your face," she murmured to herself. "A chosen like you cannot remain hidden forever within the sea of people. You may want to remain out of sight, but your incredible talents have doomed you to be revealed, no matter how much you try to hide. I will find out who you are, one day." Xianxia had spent a lot of time secretly investigating the little turtle. For a time, she had suspected by Xiaochun, but soon decided that it couldn't be him, and made up her own version of who the little turtle was. He was a cold, proud man who would never taint his own name because of a desire to be famous. Xianxia actually wasn't the only one who had come to such a conclusion. Most people felt the same, even Hu Xiaomai. Of course, much of that was because of how much Bai Xiaochun himself had propagated stories about the little turtle. Many people had even analyzed why he used a turtle as his mark. The explanation was that he had a reserved personality, but also maintained lofty aspirations. Like turtles, his medicinal pills would survive for thousands of years into the future. Hu Xiaomai stood not too far off in the distance, her eyes wide with adoration. Because of Bai Xiaochun's urgings, she worshipped the little turtle more than anyone else in the sect. In fact, she'd even found other disciples like herself, and had formed something of a club, which they called the Little Turtle League. What? The Little Turtle? Hu Xiaomai nearly jumped up into the air in excitement as she pointed at the auction stage. The entire auction floor had devolved into chaos. Now, people no longer said even a single comment in anger or skepticism. Instead, profound expressions appeared on their faces. He definitely pursues excellence to the extreme. A proud chosen such as the little turtle would never perform a spirit enhancement on a medicinal pill just to sell it at auction. He seeks the quintessence of the Tao of medicine. He did it as a means of research, because of his incredible focus. Even the inner sect disciples who had been in such pain earlier were now heaving sighs and looking at each other in dismay. All of them had to admit they were incapable of pulling off a threefold spirit enhancement. Now I understand what type of chosen he is. He's not insane, nor is he showing off. He has grand aspirations. He's completely focused. He wants his medicinal pills to reach the ultimate pinnacle. Incredible. Shocking. This level of focus, this level of willpower, this type of perfect pill, we can all strive to imitate him. A threefold spirit enhancement can raise an object's quality by 3 grades. That means that this medicinal pill was originally mid-grade. The little turtle's skill in medicine concocting has already far surpassed my own. He definitely deserves his reputation. That medicinal pill should be kept as souvenir. I must have it. The inner sect disciples' eyes shone with a bright light. Although the pill wasn't suitable for them to consume, it could fill them with inspiration. Looking at a pill like that made them feel as if they were looking at a chosen who cared not for fame or fortune, who was completely focused, who strove only after the Tao of medicine. Seeing how quickly the conversation had changed, Bai Xiaochun, who had been joining along in the public outrage, suddenly stared around with wide eyes. After hearing what people were saying, his face began to turn red. Are they talking about me? He thought, trembling. He had never before realized how superior he was. Now that he suddenly saw the light, he had the urge to yell at the top of his lungs, to tell everyone around him that he was the famous Lord Turtle. However, it was at this point that Qian Song cleared his throat and smiled. As all of you can see, this pill has great symbolic meaning. Minimum bid, 500 spirit stones. Bid increment is a minimum of 50 spirit stones. Bai Xiaochun gasped when he heard the astronomical price. Most outer sect disciples couldn't even afford that many spirit stones. 600 spirit stones. 700 spirit stones. That pill contains the essence of the Tao of medicine. I must acquire it. 800. Who dares to top me? The inner sect disciples immediately began to call out prices, and soon everyone was in an uproar. Bids continued to be called out, and soon the price reached 1,500 spirit stones. Bai Xiaochun's throat was dry, and he was panting in disbelief. "Crazy," he mouthed in excitement. "They're all crazy." "Wait, let's get a bit more crazy, people. Come on. Everybody join in. 1,800 spirit stones." That bid came from Xianxia, causing numerous people to look over in her direction. Bai Xiaochun even began to cheer her on. The price had already reached the limit of what was possible for inner sect disciples to afford. Although none of them wished to let the pill go, they had no choice but to sigh. After all, Xianxia was already a chosen in the Tao of medicine. Since she wanted the pill, none of the other disciples were willing to compete with her. Bai Xiaochun was very pleased with the price, and had to hold himself back from running over to Qian Song, grabbing the auction hammer, and banging it down to end the bidding. However, it was at this point that the stubborn and determined voice of young woman rang out, fiery as a pepper. "I am Hu Xiaomai of the Hu clan. I bid 3,000 spirit stones." Chapter 79. Xiaochun, we believe you. Bai Xiaochun's eyes went wide as his mind filled with the thought of 3,000 spirit stones. He looked over at Hu Xiaomai, eyes shining, and suddenly felt the desire to run over, hug her, give her 3,000 thumbs up and tell her, "Great job." When the rest of the disciples on the auction floor heard that huge price coming out of Hu Xiaomai's mouth, the commotion instantly ceased, and jaws dropped. They looked over to find Hu Xiaomai standing there, hands on her hips, chest heaving, looking very fair and delicate. She was pretty, but had a proud look on her face, and looked like a blazing hot pepper. Sticking her chin up, she looked over at Xianxia with a look that said, "I'm from the Hu clan, and I'm not scared of anyone. Plus, I'm rich." The overall effect wasn't off-putting, but rather made her seem quite cute. Quite a few people broke out into smiles at the sight, whereas others were even more shocked than before. 3,100 spirit stones. Xianxia said coolly, her expression growing a bit colder. "The little turtle is very important to me." Hu Xiaomai said, "I don't care how expensive it is, any pill made by him must belong to me. HMPH. 4,000 spirit stones. I'm from the Hu clan, and I have plenty of money to go around." She especially emphasized the last sentence. Next to her, Hu Yunfei bowed his head in nervous embarrassment. He wasn't sure why his little sister worshipped the little turtle with such frenzied devotion. Xianxia's fans couldn't watch this go on, and many of them began to cry out that only a loser would spend so much money on a Tier 2 spirit medicine. Hu Xiaomai wasn't too happy to hear such things. Sticking her chest out and planting her hands on her hips, she barked, "I've got a lot of spirit stones, so you can just bite me." As Bai Xiaochun watched the events unfold, he couldn't help but muse that he had made the right decision to pull Hu Xiaomai off the crooked path and onto the way of righteousness. Xianxia frowned. Unfortunately, she didn't have that many spirit stones, and so finally, she had no choice but to give up. Hu Xiaomai was delighted that Xianxia didn't make any more bids. The truth was that she didn't have as many spirit stones as she had implied. She had only said so in front of so many people in the hopes that it would force her clan's patriarch to accommodate her. In the end, Hu Xiaomai was very pleased to have won the threefold spirit-enhanced medicinal pill. Bai Xiaochun was also very pleased. Looking admiringly at Hu Xiaomai, he cleared his throat. In his opinion, considering how much she admired him, it would be improper not to tell her about his true identity. Having reached this conclusion, and seeing that the first day of the auction was coming to an end, he decided that now was the time to go out and proclaim his identity to the public. Meanwhile, backstage, various patriarchs from the cultivator clans were gathered, having been tasked with standing guard over the auction. One of them was a middle-aged man, who was currently coughing dryly as he looked around wryly at his fellow patriarchs. "Well, my granddaughter sure is stubborn. I'm afraid she's made a bit of a fool of herself in front of all of you." With that, he bitterly produced a large sum of spirit stones which he put off to the side. "What an innocent girl." The other patriarchs all laughed good-naturedly. The first day of the auction was over, and although there were more days to come, Bai Xiaochun had already sold his medicinal pills, so he didn't plan to return. He walked over to the entrance of the auction and stood there watching everyone filing out of the auction house. Virtually all of them were excitedly discussing the matter of the violet chi spirit ascension pill. Eventually, Bai Xiaochun caught sight of Xianxia. He wanted to go encourage her not to feel disheartened, but as soon as he took a step forward to head in her direction, she looked over and saw him coming. Without another word, she transformed into a beam of light that shot off into the distance. Bai Xiaochun stopped in place, feeling a bit depressed. But then he heard a voice coming from behind him. "Big bro Xiaochun." It was Hu Xiaomai, who came bouncing over happily through the crowd, followed by Hu Yunfei, who was also smiling. Bai Xiaochun looked away from Xianxia and gave Hu Xiaomai a smile of praise. Looking very much like a member of the senior generation, he patted her on the head. "Hey there, chaste little sister. I have to say, you did a great job. The way you won that final item in the auction was very domineering." Hu Xiaomei's face turned bright red. Seeming to recall something all of a sudden, she pulled out the violet chi spirit ascension pill. "Big bro Xiaochun, look. This medicinal pill was concocted by the little turtle. Would you like it? Here, take it. Didn't you say before that you also adore the little turtle? I bought this pill just for you." Anyone who saw the expression on her face would be moved. Holding out the pill to Bai Xiaochun, she looked at him with keen anticipation, as if he were the only thing that existed in the world. When Hu Yunfei saw this, his gaze softened, and he smiled, but didn't say anything. Bai Xiaochun's jaw dropped. Never could he have imagined that Hu Xiaomei's goal in winning the medicinal pill was to give it to him. It was very moving. Seeing that they were surrounded by quite a few people, he took a deep breath and put a solemn expression on his face. Eyes filling with determination, he clasped his hands behind his back like a powerful hero, a posture he had long since become very familiar with adopting. "Xiaomai," he said, "I need to reveal a very big secret." Hu Xiaomai looked shocked, as did Hu Yunfei. "What secret?" Hu Xiaomai asked curiously. Bai Xiaochun cleared his throat loudly, stuck up his chin, and swished his sleeve. "I, Bai Xiaochun, am he who shocks ghosts and gods, the preeminently famous, mysterious and unfathomable, the great and mighty Lord Turtle." He then threw his head back and laughed uproariously. The words he had just uttered had been kept locked inside of him for far too long, and it felt wonderful to speak them out in the open, especially considering he was speaking them to the person who adored him the most, Hu Xiaomai, and in front of such a large audience of onlookers. Most importantly, it wasn't proper to allow the person who worshipped him the most fervently to be kept in the dark, especially when her idol was standing directly in front of her. Bai Xiaochun stared up at the clouds above, looking very lonely. However, his ears twitched a bit as he waited to hear the shocked reactions of Hu Xiaomai and the rest of the crowd. He was already formulating the words he would use in response to the impending commotion. However, after a very long moment passed, not a sound could be heard. Everything was completely silent. Surprised, Bai Xiaochun couldn't help but look back from the clouds toward Hu Xiaomai and Hu Yunfei. Hu Xiaomai stood there with wide eyes, and Hu Yunfei was similarly shocked. As they stared mutely at Bai Xiaochun, the surrounding disciples looked on with strange expressions on their faces. "The little turtle is indifferent to worldly affairs," someone said, like a cloud floating in the sky. "Now sect Uncle Bai is calling himself the little turtle? Yeah, right. Come on, let's go." An unsightly expression could be seen on Bai Xiaochun's face, and he took a deep breath in preparation to make an explanation. "Xiaochun, are you all right?" Hu Yunfei asked. Worried, he patted Bai Xiaochun on the head. "I really am the little turtle," Bai Xiaochun said anxiously. "Oh." Hu Yunfei replied, a strange expression on his face. He quickly nodded. Sure. You're the little turtle." At this point, Hu Xiaomai gazed at Big Bro Xiaochun and softly said, "Big Bro Xiaochun, you told me before that the little turtle is like a cloud in the sky, someone who doesn't care at all about worldly matters. Actually, in my heart, you're just as important as he is. You don't need to pretend to be him." "But I really am the—" Before he could finish speaking, Hu Yunfei looked at him somberly and clasped his arm. "Xiaochun, we believe you. Bai Xiaochun's eyes went wide. Before he could finish, Hu Yunfei's expression turned more serious. Xiaochun, we really believe you. Bai Xiaochun's eyes began to glaze over as a feeling of disheartenment filled him. No matter how he tried to explain the situation, it wouldn't do any good. Things were going completely different than he'd imagined. Dejected, he turned slowly and trudged away, somehow returning to the sect. Back in his courtyard, he stared blankly up into the sky, an expression of grief on his face. But I really am Lord Turtle, he murmured, feeling very maligned. He had long dreamed about proclaiming his identity publicly, but now that dream was in tatters. After a while, he came to the conclusion that the problem lay in the fact that he had worked so hard over the years to inflate the image of the little turtle in the minds of the people. To them, the little turtle was a completely proud and extraordinary individual. More precisely, thanks to the tireless efforts of Hu Xiaomai, the little turtle had already been turned into something of a deity. After a while, Bai Xiaochun begrudgingly went to find Xu Baocai to explain the truth. Afterward, Xu Baocai stared at him blankly for a moment, and then nodded repeatedly and said that he believed him. Bai Xiaochun scowled miserably all the way back to his courtyard, where he once again stood there feeling empty. A few days later, Sun Chen came to visit. Bai Xiaochun immediately perked up. Suddenly, he had hope that Sun Chen would remember who it was that had delivered the medicinal pill up to be auctioned off. However, before he could even say anything, Sun Chen handed over the spirit stones, then clasped hands and bowed deeply. Expression solemn, he said, "Brother Bai, I'm not sure which honored chosen concocted that pill." The Sun Clan patriarch was quite shocked by the matter. "We know that the only way to contact that chosen is via you, Brother Bai. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been the one to deliver his medicinal pill. Brother Bai, could you please pass word to him that the Sun Clan hopes to have a long-standing friendship with him? If he needs any help selling medicinal pills in the future, we will use all our power to help him. Another thing, Brother Bai, could you please pass word to the chosen that I understand he doesn't seek fame and fortune, and purposely avoids big commotions? He is like a cloud in the sky, seeking perfection in the Tao of medicine. A person like him will surely reach incredible heights in the future. Therefore, our Sun Clan would be happy to handle all matters relating to the outside world for him." Sun Chen clasped hands and bowed deeply once again. When he looked up, he noticed that Bai Xiaochun's expression was completely blank. When that expression didn't change, Sun Chen once again clasped hands, bowed, and then took his leave. Inwardly, he sighed as he thought about how high Bai Xiaochun's position was in the Spirit Stream sect, and how the mysterious, unfathomable figure that no one else knew actually had dealings with him. From the very beginning, he had never even considered that Bai Xiaochun might actually be the little turtle. Their personalities were too different. After all, it wasn't just Spirit Stream sect disciples who knew about the little turtle. The cultivator clans on the outside were also aware of him. All of them had performed their own investigations, and had come to similar conclusions as Xianxia. By the time Bai Xiaochun regained his composure, the moon hung high in the sky. Sighing deeply, he leapt up onto the bamboo fence that surrounded his courtyard. Clasping his hands behind his back, he looked up at the starry sky, his long black hair swaying in the wind and his robes rustling. "I never imagined that deep within me was the desire to shun worldly matters. I am like a cloud which floats in the sky. I shouldn't have kept things hidden so well. Sometimes, being superior really is truly lonely." As he stood there in the moonlight, he flicked his sleeve, and truly looked like a lonely hero. Chapter 80. The Talents of Big Fatty Zhong. Now that he had plenty of spirit stones, Bai Xiaochun didn't want to worry about the issue of the little turtle anymore. His heart had already been pierced 1,000 times over by what had occurred. Now, the only thing left to do was go to the medicine concocting pavilion and heal by immersing himself in pill concocting. By this point, Bai Xiaochun's ability to concoct Tier 2 spirit medicine had been refined to perfection. His success rate was shockingly high, and he was already beginning to work on Tier 3 medicine. Rumbling sounds filled his workstation as he went about his work. On one occasion, something completely unexpected occurred when the pill furnace rocketed into the air and slammed into the wall, causing a huge boom to echo out and leaving a small crater behind. However, that was almost nothing compared to the time when a failed batch of pills exploded and sent out smoke that not even the workshop's protective spell formation could stop. It filled nearly half of the medicine concocting pavilion, causing everyone inside to run out, coughing and cursing the entire time. Shocked, Bai Xiaochun also ran out in similar fashion, and in the end, no one was completely sure who had caused the entire disaster. Feeling quite frustrated, Bai Xiaochun carefully returned to his workstation and began to work on another batch of Tier 3 spirit medicine. Gradually, a strange expression appeared on his face as he realized he often tended to produce bizarre spirit medicines. For example, there was the time he created the medicine which had attracted hordes of ants. And then there was his aphrodisiac pill. The truth was, all of the mystery pills he concocted were all terrifying. Could it be because I refused to use a set medicine formula in my concocting? Every time I do my work, I follow my instincts, and that's what leads to the strange transformations? Or maybe I'm just so naturally talented that God is jealous and intentionally causes problems for me. Currently, a few dozen brightly colored medicinal pills were laid out in front of Bai Xiaochun, which he looked down at, frowning. None of them were spherical. Some were cube-shaped, and others looked like malformed lumps of clay. Clearly, they were not ordinary spirit medicines, and yet, each and every one let off a strong medicinal aroma. Even if Bai Xiaochun were 100 times braver than he wouldn't dare to personally consume any of them. It was impossible to say what unimaginable effects they might produce. I want to achieve the ultimate pinnacle in the Tao of medicine. I am like a cloud in the sky, floating about effortlessly, ignoring the material world. The Tao of medicine is a path strewn with obstacles, so I must not fear. I just have to endure. That is the new me, a new Bai Xiaochun. With that, determination appeared on his face. Looking as if he were searching for the deeper truths in life, he put the pills away and once again began his concocting work. He spent nearly half a day on the next batch. Unfortunately, he had reached the point where there were few types of medicine that he could continue to work on. It was simply too dangerous. His pill furnace would explode every time, leaving significant damage in its wake. Scowling, he paid some spirit stones in compensation, at which time he was politely asked to leave the medicine concocting pavilion. He was just about to call upon his status as the junior brother of the sect leader and demand to be allowed to stay, when he realized that Big Fatty Zhong had messaged him via Jade Slip. Apparently he'd come to Bai Xiaochun's residence looking for him, and was wondering where he'd gone off to. Seeing that Big Fatty Zhong had come to visit, Bai Xiaochun left the medicine concocting pavilion. Sighing, he began to walk down one of the narrow mountain paths. If I want to pursue the Tao of medicine to the pinnacle, then I will surely face obstacles along the way. I, Bai Xiaochun, am like a floating cloud. I will not surrender. Sticking his chest out and raising his head, he walked forward for a bit until he realized that something seemed off. At this time of day, the sect was usually a busy place. But right now, Fragrant Cloud Peak was very quiet. Looking around, he noticed that not a single disciple of the 6th level of Qi condensation or higher could be seen. Everyone present was of the 5th level or lower. Shocked, he hurried back to his residence. Even as he approached from a distance, he saw a tall, skinny young man pacing back and forth excitedly in front of the main gate. That young man was none other than Big Fatty Zhong, who had lost a significant amount of weight. Eldest brother, Bai Xiaochun exclaimed in greeting, hurrying forward. 9th junior brother. Big Fatty Zhong replied, turning to look at Bai Xiaochun and laughing loudly. Big Fatty Zhong didn't care at all that Bai Xiaochun was now the junior brother of the sect leader. To Big Fatty Zhong, he was still his little junior brother. Bai Xiaochun dragged him into the courtyard, where they sat down to chat. Curious, Bai Xiaochun said, "Eldest brother, you hardly ever come to visit. What brought you over? Is there something you need my help with? Just say the word." Bai Xiaochun had long since come to view Big Fatty Zhong as a true older brother. Whenever he thought back to their days together in the ovens, he was always left with a warm feeling. Big Fatty Zhong cleared his throat, but was unable to prevent the excitement and pride from showing on his face. Looking over, he slapped himself proudly on the chest. Back in the ovens, it would have resulted in the sound of jiggling flesh, but now, only the creaking of bones could be heard. Even still, Big Fatty Jong seemed enlivened. Ninth junior brother, I have a huge secret to tell you. As soon as Bai Xiaochun heard that a huge secret was involved, his eyes went wide, and he began to pay rapt attention. Sounding very lofty, Big Fatty Jong went on to say, "From now on, I, Big Fatty Jong, am definitely going to be famous in the Spirit Stream sect. Everyone will know my name. Tons of disciples will be trying to get on my good side. In fact, even the Foundation establishment seniors will probably treat me with the utmost respect." "Oh," Bai Xiaochun said, looking surprised. "What's going on? Are you also the little turtle?" Glowing with exuberation, Big Fatty Jong took a deep breath and lowered his voice. "Little turtle? Ninth junior brother, you know that my master is the Peak Lord of Violet Cauldron Peak, Xu Meixiang, right?" Bai Xiaochun nodded. He had known who Big Fatty Jong's master was for some time, and also knew that she was the reason he had lost so much weight. She didn't like fat people, although that had also led Bai Xiaochun to consider some other strange possibilities regarding the situation. "Do you know what my master is best at?" Big Fatty Jong continued. "Spirit enhancement. And do you know what I'm studying from my master? Spirit enhancement. Ha ha ha. I, Big Fatty Jong, happen to be blessed with incredible natural talent when it comes to spirit enhancement. My talent is so extraordinary that even my master was completely shocked, and praised me to no end. Today, she actually said that it would only be a few more years before I'm the #1 Grandmaster of Spirit Enhancement in the entire Spirit Stream sect." Big Fatty Jong rose to his feet, looking excitedly up into the sky, boiling with excitement. It was as if he were the most important being in existence. Bai Xiaochun blinked. Seeing Big Fatty Jong's mighty pose, he quickly plastered an adoring expression on his face and exclaimed, "Spirit enhancement!" Bai Xiaochun's reaction made Big Fatty Jong even happier. Slapping his shoulder, he said, "Ninth junior brother, from here on out, lots of people are going to be asking me to do spirit enhancements. If I don't like them, I'll refuse no matter what. If I do like them, then I'll charge them an arm and a leg. But you and Third Fatty are both from the ovens. For the rest of my life, I won't charge you a single spirit stone. We're family, so as long as you provide the ingredients, I'll perform spirit enhancements for you for free." Big Fatty Jong seemed high-spirited and full of mettle. From the moment he arrived at Violet Cauldron Peak, he had felt suppressed, but now that he knew he had a talent for spirit enhancement, he was elated. This was actually the first time he had ever come to visit Bai Xiaochun. "Elder brother, you're incredible!" Bai Xiaochun exclaimed, looking ecstatic. Come," said Big Fatty Jong. "Give me something, anything. I'll do a one-fold enhancement right here. With one of my weapons, you'll definitely get into the South Bank's top 10 during the qualifying rounds a few months from now. Then you can represent the South Bank to fight the North Bank in the chosen battles." Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times. Seeing how excited Big Fatty Jong was, he fished around in his bag of holding for a bit, and then pulled out one of the Spirit Stream sect's ordinary flying swords, of which he had a few. He quickly handed it over to Big Fatty Jong. Big Fatty Jong took a deep breath and then slapped his bag of holding, causing a few pieces of ore to fly out, which then floated around the sword. Then he closed his eyes, and unleashed the explosive power of his cultivation base. Although his cultivation base couldn't quite match up to Bai Xiaochun's, he was already in the great circle of the 6th level of qi condensation. His hair whipped about as he waved his left hand, causing silver light to shine out. As soon as the light appeared, a wind sprang up, and the entire area seemed to fill with fluctuations of spiritual energy. The energy streamed toward the pieces of ore, which filtered the energy before it passed on toward Big Fatty Jong's left hand. At the same time, the pieces of ore began to melt. In a short time, they were already half gone. Bai Xiaochun's eyes flickered. This was his first time ever watching as someone performed a spirit enhancement, and the process was very different than when he used the turtle walk. Apparently, the spirit enhancer would communicate directly with heaven and earth, and then filter its explosive power through the ore to soften it. Soon, Big Fatty Jong began to shake. After enough time passed for half an incense stick to burn, he took a deep breath, and his eyes snapped open. Then, blinding silver light shot out from his hand to sweep over the sword. Spirit actuation. The air seemed to vibrate as the silver light shooting out from Big Fatty Jong's hand bored into the flying sword. In the blink of an eye, the entire sword had turned silver. The sight was shocking to say the least, and Bai Xiaochun couldn't help but gasp. Panting, Big Fatty Jong handed the flying sword over to Bai Xiaochun. "Take it," he said, his voice brimming with confidence. "The sword's spirit has already been actuated. If you pour some more spiritual power into it to do a spirit test, the silver designs should appear." With that, he mopped the sweat off of his forehead. Bai Xiaochun took the flying sword and then excitedly poured some spiritual power into it. Instantly, cracking sounds could be heard as silver lines appeared on the surface of the sword. Moments later though, they faded away, and then cracks began to spread out, as if the sword couldn't contain the energy of heaven and earth which had been imbued into it. A moment later, it had transformed into nothing but a lump of slag. "Heh!" Bai Xiaochun said, looking surprised. Big Fatty Jong's jaw dropped, and the two of them exchanged glances. Bai Xiaochun cleared his throat, and was just about to say that it had been a low-quality sword to begin with, when Big Fatty Jong grabbed it and looked it over with wide eyes. After a moment, he stamped his foot angrily. "I made a mistake. I didn't control the fusion with the spirit iron. The energy of heaven and earth was a bit too volatile." "Ah, it doesn't matter. All right, ninth junior brother, give me another flying sword, I'll try again." Big Fatty Jong stared at Bai Xiaochun with bloodshot eyes. Bai Xiaochun produced another flying sword, whereupon Big Fatty Jong took a deep breath. Expression very serious, he went through the process again, until the sword glowed with silver light. Then he handed it back to Bai Xiaochun. Why don't you do the test, eldest brother?" Bai Xiaochun said hesitantly. Voice solemn, Big Fatty Jong said, "The first major rule of spirit enhancement is that unless the object belongs to the spirit enhancer, then he must not do the spirit test himself. It's a set rule that I can't violate. If I break the taboo, it will lead to endless troubles." Seeing how determined Big Fatty Jong was, Bai Xiaochun nervously took the sword. He truly wanted it to work this time, otherwise it would be a significant blow to Big Fatty Jong. After a moment of thought, he said, Eldest brother, why don't you wait here for a moment? I'll go into my room to do the test. I think I put too much thought into it before and got too nervous."